Oh, hi, March. Welcome to the LCS Countdown, where for the next 30 minutes, we'll talk top dogs in the top lane and take a listen to some team comms before the timer reaches 0, of course, and we load onto the Rift. I've got Emily, Rand, Alorm, and Freak by my side. Let's start with the big news at the top of the day. Ryoma is in, Damonte is out. Initial reactions.
My initial reaction is it makes some degree of sense. So if you look at laning phase stats, for example, Damonte is complete bottom of the barrel on a second place team. So something's kind of going wrong right there. And it's not just because he's roaming, like his CST is negative, but also his gold and everything else because it's not getting that much done. On the other side, Ryoma has some of the best performances of any player in Academy. He's topping the charts in most regards for Academy mids. Now, sure, LCS and Academy are not the same thing, but if you think these players are close in skill, Ryoma is playing among his very best, so I'm excited to see him get the shot.
I appreciate that Alarm's initial response is, that's whack, and then Freak is like, stat. I think one thing I do want to say about Ryoma, because I feel like the community reaction has been very split, I do think that 100T have kind of struggled in this meta, and it's not all on Damonte, but I do think that they have also struggled to find something that he is super comfortable on that makes the most of what he's really good at, which is when he's communicating well with the team, he's really good at roaming to side lanes so they can cover and create more side lane pressure. I think that Ryoma, to Freak's point, has been performing really well. I also feel like people have this very set expectation of him from his previous performances, where they remember like 1 or 2 bad performances and then they're like, okay, that is the breadth and scope of this player, which is just untrue. So while I'm sad that we're not going to see Damonte, because I think he is a huge part of what 100 Thieves' identity has been thus far, it's pretty exciting to see Ryoma get the shot, and I hope he does well.
Okay,
Alarm?
So in terms of timing for this, I think the swap is actually fine because 100 Thieves aren't panicking right now. This isn't a swap that's like, my God, Ryoma, we need to get you in and get wins as soon as possible. I've been there, it's not good, but these guys, you know, it's all right with them. However, I do think a lot of their wins come from the early game, and that's where 100 Thieves shine, is that they make these early game dives and they can snowball that into a lead later. And I'm a firm believer that Damonte is a big part of that because of his champion pool, especially on Twisted Fate and Galio, which are criticisms toward him because his champion pool can seem kind of small because of that. And maybe they haven't practiced much else. So I'm a little worried to see how their early game will go this time, because historically, if their early game doesn't go well, they're usually in clown fiesta kind of games that look really ugly, and sometimes, you know, they don't even catch the win at the end of the day. So we'll see how he does.
Now, 100 Thieves currently at 8-4, but struggling as of late. We'll see if the Ryoma swap can help them out. I do just want to also point out that Papa Smithy was vocal on Twitter about the move, saying that they've always looked at these two as in contention or competition for the LCS spot. This week, practice, Ryoma showed up, so they felt he was deserving of the LCS starting spot. We'll see if he can prove it here on the Rift today. But before we poke our power rankings bare, I want to get a quick refresher on the current standings overall for the league. We got Cloud9. They are uncontested in first place with a 10-2 record, followed by 100 Thieves and TSM tied up in second at 8-4. Of course, Dignitas, Evil Geniuses, Team Liquid all together in fourth place. Freak.
The big thing I care about here, look at the line between Team Liquid and Immortals. You need to get top 6 with 6 games remaining, by the way. 6 games, so this week, next week, and then after that is playoffs. You've got 6 games to make playoffs. Top 6 make it. Top 4 do not start in the lower bracket. So you want to get from 7 to 6, and you want to get from 5 to 4. That's the push. And there's a 2-game gap between 6 and 7, so good luck to Immortals and everyone. And, you know, above that, obviously, you want to see Dignitas, TL, and Co. like get up to top 3, top 4.
Simple as that, and you got 2 weeks to do it. Now, as Cloud9 continue to prove their dominance here in Spring, Riv sat down with our MasterCard Player of the Week, Blabber, to find out how he dominated in the new jungle patch.
Thank you, Dash. It's that time again for MasterCard Player of the Week, and I am once again joined by Blabber. Just too good. Can't be stopped. Bring on new metas. Whatever you want to do, he's going to get it again. Blabber, great to have you back. I have to say, Cloud9 sitting in first place. The team must be...
Yeah, glad I was able to win Player of the Week again. I definitely think we are in a very good spot as a team right now. I think we're still improving as well, and I wouldn't say we're very happy with our skill level right now, but it's definitely good to know that to feel at least that we are the best, and I guess know that there's stuff we can improve on as well.
Right on. Anything you can share in terms of what you're not happy with currently with the team?
I mean, I think obviously all of our play can just be better. We can all play better. there are like small individual mistakes that we do. Honestly, I think our team play is pretty good right now. I think sometimes we make a lot of mistakes and we overforce sometimes, but besides stuff like that, I think there's stuff that we can look at ourselves. But in general, I think we are playing pretty well right now.
All right. And focusing on you because you're just racking up player of the week, week after week. What is the Blabber approach? If you were to kind of put an idea behind it, why does this keep working? And why are you able to just be so much better than the competition time after time?
I mean, for me personally, I think players in general don't, or the players in NA in general just aren't as good as international, right?
Okay.
And I think I have been playing very well this split. Specifically, I do think I've been playing better this split than I did in spring 2020 when I won MVP. I think then my team was a lot better, or like maybe not a lot better, but like together as a team, we played much more dominantly than right now. But right now, I feel like I'm playing very well individually, and I think I'm also able to adapt to the meta. And I think the champions that are in the meta right now, they like fit my playstyle, I guess, or they're champions I like to play.
And that perfectly leads into my next question that, patch 11.4 did impact that jungle meta, and it didn't stop you from getting player of the week again. Blabber, are you patch proof? Will you continue to get players of the week here for the rest of the season?
I mean, this week specifically, I was able to play like champions that I've always been very comfortable on. Olaf and Gragas are two of my best champions of all time. And Hecarim is a champ that I also like to play a lot as well. So it's not really like I played anything too different, I guess. But I definitely think that the current champions are champions I'm very good at.
Awesome. Blabber, always a pleasure to talk to you as we throw back to the State Farm Analyst desk. Congrats again, and thanks for chatting with me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Riv. And thank you, Blabber, for those insights ahead of C9's game today, which, when we pull up our schedule, will be taking place after we kick things off with TSM versus Dignitas. Of course, 100 Thieves facing Evil Geniuses after that. Both important matchups for playoff seeding. We'll see Team Liquid take on Golden Guardians and close out our day with Immortals versus CLG. Both rosters looking to rack up those wins before our playoff picture begins to solidify. But before we get into today's matches, I want to take a look at how our teams stack up in the top lane. After the breakout success of Mark Z's power rankings last week, I figured it was time for round 2, starting with Alorum. Who is the cream of the crop at the top, my friend?
All right, the best player at the top is Impact, and my God Freak, hold on, stop. What is going on? Okay, all right. Let me ignore that. Let me ignore that and close my eyes real quick.
Continue on.
Okay, Impact, #1, always doing well, even when he's behind. And in fact, last week we saw a game where it was Impact versus Alfari in the top lane, and Impact was just getting camped over and over again. And despite being behind, he always manages to make himself an enormous presence in the game. You can't set him far enough behind to stop him from doing something in the game. While I feel every other top laner has had kind of lackluster games where they get set behind and are kind of a little bit invisible for the rest of the game. So the top 3, Impact, Alfari, Someday, is very close, but because Impact is so solid and that he can play the multiple styles and consistently does well in every single game, I'm giving #1 to Impact.
So piggybacking on stuff Alarum said, because I agree with everything that you said there regarding Impact. The reason why I rated Alfari a little bit higher is because I think a lot of the quote-unquote weaknesses you can find in his statistics are from a team difference to a point where a lot of times he's been able to get massive advantages topside, whether it's on his own or with jungle help, and then the team has not been able to translate that into leveraging it elsewhere around the map, or maybe sending him in all his power to a different side lane or a different side of the map so they can, cross map with either getting kills or just giving him more farm and waves, having him take turrets, etc. So that was kind of the difference maker for me, but I don't disagree with anything that Alarum said. I do think that one of us on the panel has a very different top 2. Freak, explain yourself.
I will explain myself on Fudge. Here's what happened, okay? So I will give you all the look at what happened to my tier list. Okay, first of all, this is performance based, okay? This is how you've played in the first 12 games of LCS Spring Split. This is not counting lock-in. This is not projecting how good you're going to be today or next week or whatever. It's how those 12 games have gone. And basically, it's like, look, I started out and I like did my like in the mind's eye power rank, and indeed Fudge was like 8th when I was like, without looking, I think Fudge is 8th place. And then I looked at what actually happened. I looked at how your team is doing, how you are doing, how much help you're getting from your junglers, and look at that. Jungle proximity difference, 9th. Fudge does not get help. He's the KD leader of the top lane. Sure, you're on the winning team, whatever. The K plus A at 15 means he's getting no help, and he's top 3 in getting himself involved in kills and assists. You include KDA at 15, and he's number 1. He gets almost no help comparatively, and he is the number 1 KDA top laner at 15, which means he's getting nothing at all, yet he's 6'4" and 17. Better than Alfari, better than Someday by a million, better than Impact, better than everyone. He's an amazing weak side top laner.
You know what? I'm actually going to add an extra point to Freak as well, because he mentioned his own jungle proximity, which is negative. It should be pointed out that in matchups, his opponents also have an above-average jungle proximity difference, so therefore are getting more help than normal against him. So, I mean, hey, those are some pretty solid arguments. I'm now curious, Alorum, you know, how you're processing all of that, since you do have Fudge down there at 8.
All right, I just want to say that the past 5 games C9 has played, Fudge has played Gragas in every single one. So they are planning around the weak side. But Gragas is like one of the safest characters in the game. Even bullies don't get Gragas out of lane because his sustain is so insane. So I will not say Fudge is bad, because that's just not true. Fudge is a good player. But I do think a lot of this does come from the fact that C9 is team gapping a lot of the other guys, and Fudge is along there like, all right, guys, put me on Gragas and I will do things.
Yeah, I was joking previously that you could do a compilation of, not just in NA, by the way, but across all regions, a compilation of people trying to dive top lane Gragas and failing, because he's always, almost always able to get actually trade kills up in that top lane. If you try to dive a Gragas, it's actually pretty easy depending on your positioning. But I will say, I want to bring up the fact that for the first week and a half or so, Fudge was going up against the Flashless Camille with Ignite, and Blabber was up there pretty constantly, and I think that skews the statistics. Again, I don't think Fudge is bad. Like, I am speaking of him the same way I'd speak about like Revenge, for example, where I think they're both really talented. I think they both have a lot of room to grow. Another issue that I had with rating this is that it's so heavily team dependent, and without ProView, I kind of have to default to a lot of things that Alarim can say about laning, because I can only infer off of looking at the mini map, right? Like when a wave is crashing, whether it's a cannon wave, did you push the wave here? Like when are you TPing? You know, how are you actually like, because wave manipulation is actually, I think, a super important part to me of what makes a good top laner. I think laning in that long lane requires a certain skill set that is difficult to evaluate if you're not constantly looking at what happens. So I can only infer some stuff. But yeah, and that's where like I would knock Fudge a bit. And again, I don't want anyone to look at these lists and just be like, well, like Niall sucks because he's obviously down at the bottom either. Like, again, I think this is all stuff that can be improved with experience, which is why I always have to get my arm twisted into doing any sort of power ranking.
But I guess here's the issue I have though with being like, but they're a good lane or whatever. It's like, I don't really care how smart you are. What you did is what you did. Like, I can come away and be like, well, you're very, very smart at laning, but you're down 15 CS and you died twice. It's like, well, you went down 15 CS and died twice. I don't care if it was because you're dumb or because you got outplayed or whatever happened. The results happened. Fudge is playing weak side, and Gragas can be dove. He's died 4 times in 12 games in 15 minutes. That's absurd. No one has numbers that low. And he's got 17 assists.
I'm learning so much about your thought process. I like it.
What's up? Yeah.
I said I'm learning so much about your thought process. I disagree, but like I appreciate your explanation.
Sure.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I was just gonna say in general, this is, I think it just goes to show how many different perspectives can operate at a high level around the game of League of Legends. And the final point that I want to bring up here is that it's very rare that I have someone on the desk doing a power ranking of the very lane that they play professionally. In fact, ranking a lot of players that they have in fact laned against. So I do want to return to Alorum just on the final point here when it comes to, you know, power ranking the top laners. What did that personal perspective kind of lend to you when looking at each of these guys and trying to rate them?
Right, so, you know, Freak's over here. He's got his, like, numbers or whatever you call them. But I have laned against the vast majority of the LCS top laners, whether it was an academy or an LCS. And so I can kind of compare themselves toward how I played. And I'm not saying, you know, I was the cream of the crop of the top lane, but I got a feel of what it's like to lane versus Impact and Someday, and then what it was like to lane versus everyone else. I didn't get the chance to play against Alfari and Finn, so I kind of just have to make, you know, a judgment based on what I see right here. But man, when I played against Impact and Someday, it just felt like their hands on their keyboard and mouse were just doing things I couldn't replicate their play. But everyone else, it was like, all right, I can play versus this player and I can replicate what they do and match their impact on the game. But the top three was just so hard to actually mimic their play and try and make an advantage based on what they do that I'm confident in my top three picks.
All right, there you have it. I mean, we could obviously talk about these lists all day. We didn't even tackle every single player, but I love the conversation that it generated, and ultimately we'll see how each of these top laners perform over the next 2 weeks during that push for playoffs. We are going to take a quick breather. On the other side, we'll get a peek into CLG's comms and check in on patch 11.4. We'll see you here.
I can jungle versus Brox from Elise.
I think you can jungle versus Broxon more than just Elise.
Dude, I can win. Really?
Ego. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Flash turn? Yeah, I'm watching here. Go around here. Yeah, look at this guy.
No flash. Oh no.
Play slowly. Listening front. Blood flash.
Let's go flash.
Yeah, go on, clash. What is he at? Yeah, flash. Nice.
Keep going.
It's all you guys. Nice.
Broxa.
Oh, nice. Look on him then. Nice time.
On my way.
Nice.
Yo, Max,
I'm gonna be kind of low.
Here, just here. Walk.
Yeah, I'm not good.
I'm going. Here. Hey. He's huge.
Nice.
Fight
together. Connecting.
Punch it back.
Niddly.
I can chase. Niddly no flash. I still have you on you.
Chase Niddly.
Got Alistar.
Okay,
Nash,
get Drake.
Drake first.
I'm chasing.
Okay, up to you.
Watch his spear.
I got you, Jin. I have stun.
Huge, guys, huge. Rennick here. He's running. Can we kill him?
I think it's dead.
I think so. Okay, save the wave. Wave.
Wave only. Yeah.
I can ult.
I'm done. Let's go.
Yes, we can go.
We're fighting
Look mid, guys.
Play together.
Yeah, 12
I'm dipping behind. Let's go.
Okay, catch Italy.
Okay.
Italy flash.
Nilly's dead. I can go, guys.
There.
Azir?
It's here.
Because I was basically back in the end, okay?
I can chase with you, Jason.
Nice. Go flash.
Push mid.
Guys, you're so good, by the way.
Yeah.
Carried me. Guys, you're so good.
Good. Good job.
Welcome back to the Countdown, where I can assure you that commercial break, the top lane tier list conversation continued all the way through. We're only moving on because we have to. We're entering our second week of patch 11.4 here in the LCS, and it seems that previous reports regarding the death of the jungle carry may have been a little over-exaggerated.
Yeah, so Alarum and I last week were on this same analyst desk where we were previewing the patch, and we were talking about how we might see some changes in the jungle, maybe Gragas flex. I know Alarum really wanted to see that at least. We didn't get to see it. We did see the Gragas flex from Blabber, but I don't think it's a huge shock that, Hecarim, Olaf, Udyr, when he makes it through red side ban, have still kind of reigned supreme, because that early clear speed is still super, super important. And despite the fact that I know Blabber gave an interview, I believe it was after his first game on the Hecarim, where he talked about how he did feel the difference, definitely. Like, he didn't feel as powerful, especially going into the mid game. That early clear speed and the carry potential that you still have is still so important. So I think we'll still see people maybe starting to try some stuff. We saw Skarner more often. I still think Gragas can be flexed. I like Gragas. I think he's super versatile. But generally, yes, the death of the fast clearing jungler was certainly over exaggerated.
I super agree, and I think right now, until Riot does something like maybe slowing down the camp respawns or something, you're not going to see that much change in the jungle. Like even if you would want to play Nautilus jungle compositionally, he clears the jungle too slow. Where Udyr can comfortably do 6 camps and then gank and then be back for the next camp in time. Because it's back in 2 minutes, by the way. So hurry up. Nautilus gets 4. And then walks back to the first one because it's already too late. Udyr gets 6 and then gets a gank off and then does that, right? And so until you can match that kind of pressure, yeah, you'll be less of a carry, but at least you're a champion. So I think until that gets slowed down, there's no way you really do anything.
Look, Freak, I won a normal game this week playing Comet Ash jungle, so I'm going to take everything you say with a grain of salt, okay? All right, no, but in actuality, as we talk about maybe the jungle position and the nerf being a little over-exaggerated, Freak, I think then it's natural to look at the other big changes that the patch brought through, most notably then in the marksman position.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2 patches ago, we saw Samira get nerfed. Over the last 2 patches, we saw the big one, which is Jinx getting buffed. And it's not that the meta is all hyper carries, but if you want to play a marksman focused composition, Tristana mid or bot, Jinx in bot as well, actually has more picks than Trist in the bot lane overall. I think totally a viable champion overall. If you want to play hyper carry comp, that now exists for you, and it's just one more tool in the quiver for these teams.
Yeah, I want to see even more Jinx. I want to see more Caitlyn too. I know LEC played her a bit. I love the swap to more ranged compositions, and I'd like to see it more going forward because I think ranged AD carries can make a comeback until, Samira makes a comeback on the next patch.
That'll be next week, yeah.
Well, I talked about it last week, and I'm going to talk about it again, that I think Karma is the next up-and-coming big pick and ban. It can be flexed in 3 different positions. We've seen it top already, mid, and support, and it's going to be an enormous pick, especially next patch once it gets a buff. But going with the hyper carries, things like Jinx and Tristana that scale really well into the late game, Karma's value is just so insane because she's just one of the best team fight enchanters in the entire game. Plus, she has a very safe lane phase to scale up for that late game.
And a couple sneaky buffs over a couple of different patches. Now, despite a rough week in the new patch, 100 Thieves are one of the most talked about teams this spring. And an important part of that conversation, of course, is their longtime top laner. To learn more about his road to 100 Thieves, here's Someday, oversimplified.
As the 100 Thieves veteran competes in his 5th year in the LCS, it seemed prudent to look back on Kim Chen-Ho's journey so far in Someday, oversimplified. Someday made his debut in 2013 on KT Rolster B. After a benching and some swaps, he'd find a spot on KT Arrows where he'd make fans proud, winning out in the Telecom Wars, winning 2014 Champion Summer, and finally sending KT to Worlds in 2015. Then, sad KT things happened, and he'd look for a fresh start in the LCS as Dignitas Someday in the spring of 2017. The first year of the LCS would prove that Someday's caliber was unquestionable, but not unstoppable. There was no straightforward formula to Someday's carry. Sometimes Someday would smash on tanks. Sometimes he would split for the win. A tough code to crack. The next year, Someday would find a home on freshman organization 100 Thieves and impress with a first-place finish in the regular season. They'd make a run to finals in Miami, but miss out on the title. Since then, 100 Thieves went through a whole lab's worth of roster experimentation, one of which sent Someday to Academy, where he casually won 11 of 13 games he competed in and eventually won the 2019 Summer Academy Finals on exclusively carry champions. After another lackluster run in 2020, 100 Thieves have found a core to form around the top lane juggernaut to hopefully deliver him a long overdue LCS championship. And that's all you need to know for Someday, oversimplified.
Thank you once again, Riv. We are now just minutes away from TSM loading onto the Rift against Team Dignitas, a team that has pleasantly surprised us so far this spring, though last week did prove to be a difficult test for the team, to say the least, Emily.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I've praised Dignitas in the past, it's that I thought they found a really cool play style, not only around like Dardoch's rotating jungle picks, but just having him be a jungle carry. I think both of their solo lanes, that takes pressure off of them. They've been allowed to pick stuff that they've both been really comfortable on and have been performing super well. And then people have already talked about how well the Dignitas bot lane has also performed. I did want to call out the solo laners plus Dardoch though, because I think in terms of stepping forward, recovering from this past week and going ahead, I I know it was kind of, I called this out, it was kind of unfortunate that they ended up with so many early kills on the Nidalee in that game and were unable to transition it into something in the mid game where they can then close the game out, and CLG ended up outscaling them. I still do want Dignitas to stick to their style that we had seen from them throughout, like up until this point. Like I definitely don't want them to suddenly look at those games and be like, oh, we were doing the wrong thing, because I like a lot of the things they were doing. And again, I think all of the focus on Dardoch actually takes a lot of pressure off of what you're picking for Fake God and Saligo, two solo laners who have been performing definitely like above community expectations.
I mean, that means eyes on the jungle matchup here. Of course, Alorum, as he's going to be going up against Spica today. But even statistically, looking at these two guys, they're very similar. So how do you view this matchup in its specificity?
Well, I don't think this is actually going to be like a tough matchup for Dardoch. I know we've been hyping up Spica a lot, but Dardoch has been a really, really good performer for Dignitas. I think a lot of the reasons they're winning is because he's able to keep pressure on the map, and that his entire champion pool is just throwing teams off guard. No one knows how to draft versus Dignitas because they're going to go through their draft prep late at night, 3-hour draft meeting. They're going like, okay guys, what will Dardoch play? And they're going to list off every single jungler in the entire game. So that sometimes puts a damper on your draft prep plan. And while Spica is very good, I think that Dardoch is more important for the team of Dignitas, and that his performance matters a little bit more than Spica's.
Fair enough. So eyes on that jungle to see how they both perform today. But Freak, we also have to talk about stakes of the matchup as we are in the final stretch, the home stretch with just 2 weeks left to go. These teams are close in the standings.
Yeah, I talked about it when we saw the standings overall, but yeah, Dignitas are a game behind, and the important thing for really any team in playoffs is getting top 4, and honestly probably getting top 3 because you want to dodge Cloud9 in the first week if they're going to stay as good as they are. Dignitas right now are tied for 4th, which means even if it all goes well, they're playing Cloud9 first round, you're in lower bracket anyway. So they really, really, really want to get 3rd. They're already 1-0 against TSM on the season so far. If they 2-0 TSM, they're tied for 3rd, and then auto win the tiebreak, and then, hey, look, you got to dodge Cloud9. You're in the upper bracket. You're in the upper bracket finals. This is a really good playoff road. So this is actually, I think, a very important game. If Dig wins this, I think there's a really good chance that, you know, they're making a fairly easy playoff road for them.
Back to you real quick, Alorum, before we head to the casters for the game as we talk about the jungle matchup having its important, yes. I want to know where else on the map you're looking for each of these teams to make the difference in a win.
So on TSM's side, I'm looking at Power of Evil. He is the rock in the mid lane. He's always doing very well, and especially because he's not exactly a roamer type of mid laner. He kind of sits back, he gets his farm advantage, and where he shines is in these team fights. He has an enormous impact that he's constantly exerting a lot of pressure, and he's a very high priority target for the enemy team. And on Dignitas' side, we've seen a lot of aggression come out of Aphromoo and Neo, especially when they're on the Callista pick. We do see a little bit of hiccups here and there, like last week where Neo just stepped up a little too far and died in the level 1 in the early game. But on TSM's side, Lost and Sword Art are kind of also on the Power of Evil type playstyle where they sit back, Sword Art roams a little bit, and Lost just farms up. If Dignitas win this game, I'm going to predict that it comes from the jungler going to the bot side and Neo and Aphromoo playing aggressively on Lost and Sword Art.
There you have it. The teams are just about ready. So, Freak, I know you are stepping away after Countdown. I want to thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you
You're
here
welcome.
on the desk. We are welcome. You know what? We are welcome. We wouldn't have had as interesting a power ranking discussion if not for you.
True.
But that's enough from us as we throw it over to Flowers and Kobe for the call.